A very good morning to you, and welcome to a rather damp woodland here in Bavaria. Today's talk, Corona Walk 7, is about risk and culture. What is it about culture that makes us accept or not accept certain behaviours, risks? What is it about culture that shapes our very way of understanding what's happening around us in the world? I was born in West London. I lived for 61 years in the UK before coming to Germany. That 61 years has deeply affected me in terms of my own culture and my own behaviour. Look at this video, for example. What's the first thing I say? I refer to the weather and the dampness. This is a very British way of behaving. Good morning. Not very nice today, is it? Oh, lovely sunny morning. Oh, should be nice later. This is a very typical way you might greet someone who you've never met before in your life. A complete stranger. This is so British. What else is British? Fish and chips, roast beef, Yorkshire pudding, sausage rolls, Friday night down the pub, quiz night. The list could go on, and I'm sure we could all add more things to that list, and we'd all recognise them as quintessentially British, something that we like doing or that makes us feel homely and comfortable. I've travelled a lot in my working life, and it always amazes me that wherever you are in the world, you get into an airport and you finally step aboard a British plane, and you just feel that culture suddenly encapsulate you. Good morning. Hello, can I take your seat number? And suddenly we're in that lovely, polite world that we understand as Britishness. Turn taking, waiting in a queue, being polite, letting the other person go first, being patient, not complaining when the food is bad. Yeah, many of us do this. I don't like complaining. It makes me feel uncomfortable. You travel around and you see other people in other countries and they have the waiter over and, what is this? I'm not eating this. What about our perceptions of risk and danger? Being safe, being risk averse is also something that's very British. Look at our record on road deaths, traffic accidents. We have one of the lowest death rates in Europe. Of all the major countries in Europe, ours is the lowest per 1,000 or per 100,000 deaths. We are naturally risk averse as a nation. Health and safety rules. How many times have you heard, oh, you can't do that because of health and safety? Oh, you can't do that because you haven't filled in the right form. You haven't done the right training course. We're obsessed with being trained properly, acting correctly. And the law will punish us if we are negligent, if we don't follow those rules. And Britain has also been an example to the world. British standards. Many countries just take our standards, translate them into their own language, and then use them. Without question. If it's British, it must be good. I've contributed to those. I've produced 2 British standards. I then helped produce a European standard that was very similar to the British standard. And I'm currently reviewing an international standard for crisis management. And guess what? It's just like the previous 3 ones. We're very good at producing rules for how things should be. And we're quite good at enforcing those rules. We don't always get it right, but we are a marker for excellence when it comes to risk. So what's gone wrong in the last 6 months? Sure, we're not the only country in the world affected by COVID-19, but does our culture change how we react to this? Look at the furore in the last 3 days over the behaviour of the Prime Minister's advisor. Was he following the rules? Why is the Prime Minister backing him when it's quite clear he hasn't followed the rules? Why is he walking around in a cavalier fashion, wearing a t-shirt, no mask? Is it acceptable for people in positions of power to behave like this? The quintessential Britishness of British politics, the idea of 10 Downing Street, which, at least from the front of the building, looks like a very ordinary house in Britain. The idea that the Prime Minister lives in an ordinary house that most people can identify with. We all know that behind that front door is a much bigger building with many, many rooms. This is a major challenge. As an anthropologist, I've been interested in culture for 35 years. To be honest, because of my parentage, having a Polish father and a Greek mother and being brought up in England, I've been dipping in and out of cultures all my life. And what is quite clear is that culture at the moment is being challenged and broken down. We see a population divided. 30% will blindly follow this government wherever it takes them, regardless of whether the figures on deaths are true or not, regardless of whether the government has produced PPE in sufficient quantity or not, regardless of whether the government is treating people who work in the NHS fairly or not. Then there's another third who are absolutely vehemently against what this government are doing. And then there's that group in the middle that, I don't know, well, if I just keep my head down and keep quiet, it might all go away. And then there's the deaths. 55,000 deaths. Compare that with 2,600 that die on our roads in a 12-month period. And in 3 months, we've had 55,000 excess deaths. We can't even be sure what's written on the death certificates is accurate. We can't even be sure that the number of tests that the government are doing are accurate. A week ago, they found a few cases in Wuhan in China, and immediately the government said, 11 million tests. We will test every person in Wuhan over the next 7 days. How can they do this? And we're still lying about the number of tests that we're doing? We're still counting 2 tests as, or 1 test as 2, and a pair of gloves as 2 sets of PPE, and then we have the behaviour of the Prime Minister's advisor. A clear flouting of the rules. A clear flouting of what should be going on. People have watched or stood by while their relatives have died in nursing homes. They've only been allowed 1 visit or even no visit. People have had to wait outside hospitals while their loved ones are dying. Those lucky enough to actually get into a hospital. If you want to see what a culture is really like, you need to watch a culture when it starts to break down. An oversimplification would be to see British culture as fish and chips, roast beef, Yorkshire pudding, Cornish pasties, even curry. The reality is a very much more complicated picture. What we're seeing now is that culture starting to crumble. That wonderful Britishness, turn-taking, being patient, understanding, politeness, it's starting to break down. I'm scared. I've never seen anything like this in my life. I don't want to see Britain throw away what's good. But we cannot ignore 55,000 people dying. Here in Germany, things have been handled very, very differently. And the first question that people ask me is, why do you tolerate this? Why do you British allow this to happen? How much more patience will be required before somebody says, enough is enough? Britain has led the world in risk. British standards are a hallmark of our scientific and decent way of living. And suddenly we see all of this being challenged. I look forward to joining you again very soon from a very damp woodland here in Bavaria. Thank you.